Trustee Healy.
Here.
Trustee Katsinas.
Here.
Trustee Malani.
Here.
Trustee Compass.
Here.
Trustee Reardon.
Here.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Here.
Mayor Pico.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. SportsPlex and Orland Park Health and Fitness Center, co-op carpet purchase and installation.
Mr. Chairman. Move to recommend to the Village Board to approve the proposals based on Sourcewell Shaw contract number 8080819 from Midway Flooring Incorporated, titled Proposal Letter JE 002819-007 and Proposal Letter JE 002813-001 for the purchase and installation of carpeting and associated site work at SportsPlex and Orland Park Health and Fitness Center for an amount not to exceed $297,313.46, which is $31,211.20, plus $251,944.50, plus a 5% contingency of $14,157.76.
Second.
Questions or comments? Call roll.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Wolf Road widening, 143rd Street to 183rd Street, strategic planning discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Healy.
I move to recommend to the Village Board to cancel at this time further work on the Wolf Road widening project, and recommend staff to initiate the cancellation process for the Wolf Road widening project.
Second.
Just to give everyone an update, so we've talked a lot about Southwest Highway and 143rd and Wolf Road is IDOT projects. Southwest Highway, we've worked really hard this year. It was let recently, right? So it's supposed to start construction soon?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, so we all know the 143rd Street, the effort we've put forth to try and get money for 143rd Street, and we still are not getting the state to contribute. The problem with this is that, 20-some years ago, they also embarked on the Wolf Road widening. We spent a lot of money on engineering, and we've taken some money from the federal government. But the reality is, if you look at this, I've been here 6 years, and look where we've gotten with Wolf Road. The reality is, we're probably at least, with 143rd Street, we're probably at least 20 years away. So to me, it doesn't make much sense to spend more money on engineering because we'll actually have to re-engineer it in 10 years again, all to save paying back, $400,000 roughly? To save paying that back, we're going to keep spending millions. Doesn't make a lot of sense. 20 years from now, if they decide they want to widen Wolf Road, we can engineer it again and then jump into the project, and we can dive into what we've already done. So it's not like the work's been wasted. Did I miss anything there, Kashid?
No, you covered it well.
The only thing that I also add is this is a state road, and they should be doing it. We were always trying to take the initiative on them.
Correct. Which, in some ways makes sense, but that project is so far down the road for us that it just doesn't make sense to keep spending millions on this for something that's just not going to happen, probably in some of our lifetimes. Any comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Trustee Reardon.
Yeah, I agree with this, and I think, just listening to, Kashir's comments and presentations, you got a lot of work to do. You got a lot of chasing of money and something that's not going to happen for maybe ever, and certainly not for many years. I think your time is probably better spent, so it sounds like a good idea.
Call the roll.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Joni.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Mayor Peacock.
Aye.
Catalina Subdivision Water Main Lining Phase 1 of 3 award.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Radiszewski.
I move to recommend to the village board to approve the proposal from Purple Construction USA LLC of Elgin, Illinois in the amount of $4,725,820, which is $4,325,820 plus $400,000 contingency.
Second.
So this is to redo the water, to line the water mains in Catalina. Essentially, a lot of our growth happened in, obviously, the 70s, 80s. Some of it we've already had to do because the pipe that we, that nationally people received in the late 80s was of poor quality, and it's been failing much sooner than expected. So we've already fixed a lot of those, but now we got to go back and fix these things that are 50 years old. Joel, how long do we expect this to last?
Most of these pipes will be over 50 years. So once you, if you properly wrap them, and that's a process that, but this particular project is to line. So it will have at least the 30 years on the lining portion. But the wrapping process that we do now with water mains kind of protects the mains from corrosion, which is what really is deterring the pipes nowadays.
Okay.
The chemical reaction.
And as you can see, just for Catalina, this is a $4.7 million project. So these capital projects are pretty expensive for a town of our size. Any questions or comments?
If I remember, this is, Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani?
if I remember correctly, this is well underneath the budget. I mean, we're going to keep this, if we don't hit the contingency, under the 5 million, right, for sure?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, we have 5 million this year. We'll keep it under that.
Okay. Thank you.
This is phase 1 of 3. We have 2 more phases in the next coming years with more open cut replacement of water mains in Catalina.
Okay. And the other nice thing about this, when I look at these bids, it's obviously the low bidder, but the low bidder and the second low bidder are really close together, which tells you that it's not somebody that's bid off more than they can chew, which sometimes happens when you see something really low. So, any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Mayor Peacock.
Aye.
Fire code amendments.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Katsinas.
I move to recommend to the village board to adopt the latest edition of the 2018 International Fire Code, IFC, first printing August of 2017, as written by the International Code Council, ICC, and as amended by a new local revisions to that code as presented by staff to Title V, Chapter 5 of the Village Code.
Second.
And I know that the board members have a lot of comments on this, but go ahead and do the presentation, and then we'll talk about the comments.
So we're just going to, since you guys got a copy of this ahead of time, I'm not going to go through the point-by-point summary. We're just going to go over why we're doing this for the public's information. So we adopt whole ordinances that are by an independent agency and then make local amendments. We haven't done the fire code in a while. Recently, the Orland Fire Protection District did adopt the 2018 code with amendments. We then reviewed their amendments and compared them against the amendments that we had for the 2012 code, which is what gave you what you got now. We did have some revisions that were made from the first time you got it to this most recent time based off some comments from the mayor. So those have been incorporated into the latest version that you have. So we did coordinate with the district when we did come up with our final changes, the recommendations that we're making. And we hope that we can clarify existing issues that are local to us. Like some things like we are not going to require, for instance, sprinklers in single-family homes. That is something that's adopted by the international code. And that's just one of the larger items. So we're just trying to make sure that they're in their local context. And I'll just stop right there and then we can continue with questions.
So prior to the meeting, a couple of board members contacted me, and got a lot of comments and suggestions and concerns about this code, which doesn't surprise me. I had a bunch as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through those, and we'll take a voice vote on those changes. And if staff then can, I think the plan is, because there's so many of them, is then for staff to take all of those compiled comments and then bringing this back again. So we'll end up coming to the cow with this again. So that's kind of the plan. But we'll open it up to the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Compass.
So, Steve, I know I sent a rather lengthy list. I'm going to go through it. I know I haven't had a chance yet to see your responses to it, but just so that we include all this. 2 years into this, I'm starting to realize that going through municipal code isn't all that dissimilar from reviewing software design documents and code. Specifically with this, you know, we have the original 2018 IFC, you have the 2012, you've got the amendments, you've got all of the other commentary. It's a lot of cross-referencing to go on. So bear with me on this, because there could have been some things that I just simply missed just due to the sheer volume of the language. The first question, who today is considered the fire code official?
So it's my understanding that it's the building division manager, which is Rick Hyperzak.
Okay. And then, so that enforcement officer, section 103.1, the language there states, shall be the duty and responsibility of the fire protection district of the applicable taxing boundary to inspect and enforce sections or provisions of this code under the authority of the fire code official for structures located within the village limits. Now here's where it diverts a little bit. Where a fire district will not enforce the provisions of this code, the village will administer this function. And so my question here is, the language that seems to contradict itself. It's my understanding that legally speaking, shall is an imperative for a mandatory action. So in the beginning of this, we say it shall be the duty of the fire protection district. But then later on in the same section, the last line indicates the fire district has occasions where they will not enforce the provisions. Does that mean cannot, or does it mean will not? Is there a choice?
And let me ask first, does the fire district do those inspections, or do we do those inspections?
That is correct. The fire district does perform the inspections.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's some things we do, so just for the recording, the fire district does do the inspections. For instance, though, we coordinate the plan reviews and we send them out to our outside agency for them to do the review on that. We also write citations. So our code enforcement will write the citation, so that isn't one of the functions that the fire protection district has. We also collect certain fees for those services or for things that have to get back to the fire protection district for new development. So there are some functions that we do internally. I could talk to legal about the semantics of that. That's fine.
We should probably check that to make sure that language makes sense.
Right, and this wasn't this was the existing language. We were just readopting it, so we're open to making changes.
Well, we're cleaning it up. We might as well clean it up. Okay?
Yeah, I'm nothing if not thorough. So I went through it all because it was tough to look at just the amendments when I'm catching and looking at the other things. There's an exception clause, section 102.1.3, existing structures and facilities which in the opinion of the fire code official, a distinct or immediate hazard to life or property. So, you know, this one appears to be a catch-all clause. I truly do appreciate the intent. However, I do have a little bit of a concern when we put the word opinion into this, which essentially I want to make sure that our code is concise.
Sure.
And it's well understood. And I think that there could be some issues where a single staff member's opinion could act essentially as legislation on the fly. I don't think that that's happening, but I just want to make sure that we're clear on this, that we're talking about enforcement of the code. And the other aspect of this too is that it could be applied to existing structures. So if we made changes and someone was, you know, effectively, from my view, grandfathered in on a particular permitted structure, and then later on now there's an opinion, what's the process for that, right? Especially if we don't even have it explicitly listed in our code as a violation.
So I did forward you, and again, I'm sorry, I got these kind of late today. So I got you the commentary that is included. So this is the first volume of the book that Sean read, evidently. There's two of these. So one of the versions does have a list of guidelines about how that's supposed to be decided by the building code official. And then it includes, if I remember correctly, consultation with the Fire Prevention Bureau or someone from the fire district. So there are some checks and balances in there in the commentary on how that's supposed to be interpreted. So again, I did forward that to you, and hopefully that can answer your concern, and then you can get back with me whether it's still a concern of yours.
Yeah, and there's no question of good intent. I just think that, you know, when we're dealing with a resident or a business owner that's going to have a challenge, I just want to make sure that that's truly enforceable, right? And it's explicit within the code. Moving on to the next section.
Before you move on to the next
go
one,
ahead.
I think the critical thing here is that we want to make sure that one person is not having the ability to kind of adjust the code on the fly. And like Trustee Comp said, that's not happening now, but it could potentially happen, and it could happen, or could it? I don't know, but the way it's written, it seems like it could happen, and that would be a bad outcome for the village, I'm sure, or for the business owner, especially it's something we might not hear about till well after the fact, so it could be problematic. So let's just check that out and make sure that that language is tight.
Yeah, and this section actually just applies to when they have to enforce the design part of it. It isn't necessarily changing code provisions.
Let's just check into it.
Yep.
I think when we run into the situation too, it's a good stopping point for us to go back and revise and amend the code as necessary, right? So that we can move forward with more explicit language. So next section, 103.2 on the appointment reads, the fire code official, and I know this is old language, existing language, shall be appointed by the Village of Orland Park, and the fire code official shall not be removed from office except for cause, and after full opportunity to be heard on specific and relevant charges by and before the appointing authority. The village fire code official may designate code enforcement operations to any fire district located within its village limits. So first question I have on this one. So the terms of the appointment vaguely refer to the village as a whole, whereas most other appointed positions, including the appeal board in this section, define the advice and consent structure to the appointment. So I just think that first part is probably just a clarification on the language, understanding that it is existing, but just to make sure that we're consistent with the rest of our code, that appointment process is clear if we truly keep this as an appointed position. Part two is really more of a question, and more a question to George. Is any other staff, including Chief Rossi, afforded the protection of not being an at-will employee within our village? And if not, why would the role of the fire code official be singularly distinct in this fashion?
Yeah, there's no, well, I mean, all of our union employees have different roles, but they're not at will. So in this situation, we don't have a person whose job is just to be the fire code official. In this situation, our fire code official is also our building official.
Right. So I think to Trustee Compass's point, we need to be clear about how that person is appointed. Not just the village appoints them. That doesn't tell us anything. We have appointment processes in place. We need to spell out which appointment process we're using for that. And I think the second thing is we definitely have to take out the portion about how that person can be removed, because obviously an at-will employee can be removed at any point. And I don't think that the fire, no offense, I'm sure there's none taken, should not fall under those same rules. So there's not special dispensation because you're the fire, you're the fire official that you suddenly don't have to, the rest of the rules employee rules don't apply to you.
Yeah, the actual language, the way it is in the unamended text, says the fire code official shall be appointed by the chief appointing authority. And the jurisdiction of the fire code official shall not be removed from office except, and then I think the rest of it is the same. The commentary in this specifically says the fire code official's independence is essential so that public safety decisions are not based on political, economic, or social expediency. This is not to say that,
We'll look
Yeah,
into it.
they shouldn't be weighing in on that. I mean, we have a process in place, and we have an employee process in place, so this code should follow our processes, and it should spell it out. It should be consistent with how we handle everybody else. Does anyone on the board disagree? So all in favor of that, say aye.
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 All opposed? Oh, there you go. There's a change to make.
Section 103.3 of 2018 IFC, which was not included in the proposed amendment, so again, this is original language, but in the IFC itself, provides the fire code official with the authority to appoint a deputy fire code official, other related technical officers, inspectors, and other employees. So I guess my question here is, I don't think we've done this today, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think we have we don't.
Okay, so again, kind of going back to the keeping things consistent with the structure, I think just as we're doing with the building official, I think it should be to the village manager and the directors as to how people are hired and deputized essentially. So I would propose that we remove that from our adoption of the IFC.
Is that one of ours?
This is a local amendment, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll fix that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So strike it.
Section 103.4 speaks to liability belonging to the jurisdiction. This might be more of a question for the attorneys. I guess, where is the line drawn for liability between the village and the various fire protection districts? It's partly why I had some concerns between the shall and will not language around section 103.1.
So I attached again to in your response, the commentary on this. We are open to whatever your recommendation is, but this is something we probably want to talk to the attorneys about to find out the nuances, which is going to be my response on some of these, because I just don't have all the.
Right, I think the point is, obviously, if we're not the ones inspecting it, and we're not the ones responsible for it, why would we be liable for it? So we got to make sure that that language is consistent. We don't want to be liable for somebody else's decisions, and we should be liable for what we were responsible for.
Yeah, I think the distinction here is differences between fire department versus fire district, separate governing board, separate liability, separate insurance, and all the rest. Next section, 109.3, speaks to establishing a distinct board of appeals consisting of a trustee, 2 dev services, and 2 fire prevention bureau. So this was a surprise to me, being a trustee. I don't know that this board actually has been formed, or if so, who the trustee responsible for it is. But I believe we should follow our existing process for appealing any code issues. So again, just as we're doing with the building, it should be consistent with the fire, essentially falling under the same umbrella. So I would recommend striking this section as well, or at least referring it to the existing code appeals process for building inspection.
We'll do that.
Yeah, just to be clear, the only appeals process is for the land development code. So I can't speak to it because I don't know what the regular process is to appeal
Let's
with code.
figure out what that process is and make it consistent. Everybody agree?
Yes.
Any disagreement? Okay.
All right, bear with me, another page here. Section 307.2, open burning permit required. Third section of this referred to single-family residential barbecues, cooking equipment, potentially overlaps section 308.1.4, which already covers charcoal and other open flame cooking devices. So on this one, I think it's just a matter of making sure that our language is consistent. I recommend removing the proposed exception to avoid the definitions already defined in 2018 IFC.
All right, so in the most recent set of commentaries, I did put the definition there, and then we changed some of the existing language to more clearly separate that from what that definition was for a different section, which the mayor was concerned about. So I think we got that straightened out. Again, I'm open to doing this, but I just want to make sure, again, that there aren't some nuances, like with the fire district, that we may not be, like, your rationale makes sense. I just want to make sure there's something else, that there's a reason for this.
I mean, we've talked about this at length, which you weren't all a part of, but at the end of the day, grills, fire pits, enclosed and built fire pits and fire tables and those things, shouldn't be fall underneath this. And I don't think it does now, but we just need to make sure the language is consistent from one section to the next, so there's no confusion.
And I think the largest challenge with this is all that cross-referencing, right? Definitions are in section 2 and in other areas, so it gets tough to follow if you don't have all
Steve's
that.
going to look like George pretty soon with all the hair he's pulling out.
Moving on, section 307.4.2, recreational fires are defined in section 2, so here's that cross-reference again. A recreational fire is an outdoor fire burning materials other than rubbish where the fuel being burned is not contained in an incinerator, outdoor fireplace, portable outdoor fireplace, barbecue grill, barbecue pit, has a total fuel area, et cetera. So this is going again to what Mayor Peacock just mentioned. The proposed language suggesting recreational fires. Right now, we have some added language in our amendment where we're saying that recreational fires would be contained within a manufactured outdoor fireplace. I think that's actually breaking the definition in section 2. So I think that the way that it reads today in the 2018 IFC made sense to me. It's just that I had to cross-reference it to understand it. So I think we're safe removing the proposed language in the amendment given that definition.
I'm open to that. Again, I just want to double check with the fire district to make sure there's some nuance that they wanted to get at with this amendment.
Section 502, I have no issue with defining authorized emergency vehicle, but I wasn't certain why we did this. So I just wanted to make sure I understood what the purpose of it, especially when we're just simply referencing the state law in this. So I just want to ask the question, what question or concern was that addition addressing?
We don't know. It was, again, this is an existing language, so we'll talk to the attorney to see if there's some specific reason that it's in there.
I thought this one was in our amendment. We amended this. It's not part of the 2018.
No, I know,
policy.
but I mean, it's an existing amendment. So
got you.
it's something that we made a decision about sometime prior to this. So Rick and I didn't come up with a reason about the why. It just was there, and we were continuing it forward. But again, we can double check with the attorney and the fire district to see if there's any rationale for that.
Okay. Section 506.1.1.1 refers to the type of key box. So this section specifies a brand of key vault. However, section 506.1.2.1, which refers to elevator keys, reads as the key box shall be compatible with an existing rapid entry key box system in use in the jurisdiction and approved by the fire code official. So the IFC language could be releveraged for commercial buildings, such as we want to do here within the village with the same outcome. My concern here is the proposed language could be potentially overly specific. Steve, you and I have talked about land code development having some very specific references to events and specific places. So not that I think anything poorly about Knox brand. I'm sure it's reliable, would be around for many years, but just in general, I just want to avoid specific references just so that we don't have to go and amend a code anytime that there's a change to the market or industry.
Yeah, so I think, and again, now you're rereading it to me, something else popped in my head that I didn't respond to, but I think the first thing that you referenced had to do specifically about elevator keys, whereas I think there might be other things in the Knox boxes. Is that keys to the building, Rick?
That's true.
Yeah, so keys to the building are in the general Knox boxes also. So that's in addition to that particular point.
Yep.
The only, and again, I have to consult with the fire district, but we do have one thing that we're allowed, one type of box. I think we call it out in the code specifically by name so that anyone who's referencing the code and our amendments would know which one they have to do without having to contact us. So it's the specific thing they have to use. And we understand we have to amend it if it changes, but this is the one we've been using for a very long time. So I hear you. But that might be one of the reasons why we put it there, so that if I'm an architect and I'm designing something, I've got to find specifications that I can look online and see exactly what box that I have to spec.
I mean, that's fair. This is a minor point. I think I just wanted to avoid future conflict as far as changes that would be outside of our control. Section 507.1, this is more just language consistency. We refer to the official of the village. I'm wondering if that should probably read fire code official as it does everywhere else.
Second, I didn't, and Khurshid, you may want to chime in on this. This section that he's referencing has got to do with water infrastructure and fire hydrants. And it might be that someone from Public Works or someone from engineering might be the person who's doing that inspection. So it's someone beyond the fire code official, which is why I think the language was kind of up to a broader umbrella as just someone from the village. Is that a rationale that might be valid?
I'm getting a nod from Joel, so
Yes,
I'll
okay.
accept that as
So
a yes.
would it say instead of the official of the village, it would be an official of the village? Depending on who the appropriate one is?
That's what we'll do.
'Cause it could be, depending on what they're doing, it could be someone different.
Section 509.3, access to fire equipment in our proposed amendment. Could use the word only, so there's the word only and only to fire district personnel as far as access to this room, prohibit any other required maintenance to fire alarm panels or the sprinkler system valves that may not be performed by fire district personnel. So I understand this is meant to prohibit the individual dwelling unit panels, but I just want to make sure that we're not accidentally prohibiting ongoing maintenance as part of this code.
Yeah, so the reason for this one, and again, back me up on this, because just so I can remember all these things, but this is a situation where we want to make sure that these fire panels are in a place that may not be inside someone's unit. So the one part of the accessibility is that so we don't have to go through someone else's, or get through another door in order to get to the fire room. The second part of it is, I think it was just mean, say, everyone else stay out of here. I don't think the intention had to deal with keeping out people who were potentially technicians or inspectors. I could talk to the fire district and tweak that language if that's the way we would enforce it. But our first blush reading of this would be like,
For authorized personnel.
authorized personnel. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. And like I said, take it all with a grain of salt, because this is my computer science brain working. I don't know if the attorneys agree with some of my specificity with the language, but I always want to make sure that things are very clear, especially for those that are in the public that didn't have to wade through all of this. Next section, 511.1, emergency notification. This proposed section does not specify commercial or industrial properties, so it's presumed to apply to residences as well. Do we have this information already from property owners? Was this the intent of the language? I just wanted to get clarification on this one.
So we do collect on the business licenses now, although it hasn't necessarily been collected consistently prior to this year, emergency contact information. And this is something that the police department is concerned about on a regular basis to make sure we have a current contact in case something bad happens, we know how to get to. So for the business licenses, which are basically non-residential properties, we are now collecting that information. I believe that this information, though, is more collected for the fire district, and I know they do regular inspections, but I'm not privy to their procedure. This just authorizes that data to be collected. I'm gonna have to get back with you and find out the logistics of that. I just know what our processes are for the community development services stuff and the police department, that we're using the business license application to be collecting that data to make sure their databases are updated. So I'll have to get back with you on that.
Well, I know with the wired alarm systems, there's a permitting process for that as well, right? Where they have to give their information as far as contact is concerned. Okay.
And that, yeah.
No objection to this. I just want to make sure that we have
Yeah.
the technical means to maintain it. 'Cause if we're including all residences, it seems a little bit lofty as far as keeping that contact
I
list.
agree with you.
Okay. Section 604.5 on extension cords. So this one's where I'm going to admit that I'm not an electrician. I only had a couple double E courses in college, so I had to look up SA and SJ cords to understand the limitation that was being applied here. From what I could see as a layman, many outdoor extension cords of the type SJTW are commonly used for outdoor maintenance, holiday lighting, et cetera. Are these being limited to a maximum length of 6 feet as in the proposed language, or is it a different set? I was not clear on this.
That's different. This is talking about you running an extension cord from one outlet to some other place in your house because you don't want to put another outlet in and have it wired properly. You're not supposed to have interior extension cords more than 6 feet. It's my understanding that outlets are supposed to be 12 feet apart, so 6 feet would be like the longest that you would need to get in between regular outlets.
Extension cords are considered temporary use. And what we're trying to avoid is people using extension cords as a permanent use and running them for long distances. And obviously, that could cause a fire hazard if you're overloading an extension cord.
So the critical language here is extension cords and flexible cords shall not be substitute for permanent wiring.
Right.
Is that what we're saying? So,
Yeah, I got a very quick crash course in these too, and I found out the longer the extension cord, the hotter it gets.
Well, yeah.
So that might be another thing. So outside, that's not as much of an issue. But again, most people are not running something all the time on an extension cord. So if your pool, geez, I don't know if I should use an example, is hooked up with an extension cord to your house, maybe that isn't the safest thing to be doing. You should probably get it wired properly. But we're talking about more about permanent use.
So yeah, I don't have any argument against the intent. I think it was just the clarity of the language might need a little bit more specificity. Because just reading that last sentence on that without even the full context, you would think that any extension cord of an SJ type longer than 6 would be prohibited.
So Rick, so is an SJ and is an SJTW different than is an SJ a thing on itself? And the SJTW is it a group of types of cords that includes SJTW, or is that something completely
If I
separate?
remember correctly, it's hard coding with 600 volt.
Yeah, 600 volts or less.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
So I mean, but again, I think we're clear on the intent. I think the language wasn't clear to me at least. So it might be worth looking at.
okay.
Section 901.7.8. Section 901.7 specifically labeled systems out of service. However, we're including some proposed language that includes conditions beyond that scope. So this is really just a suggestion that maybe we change the title of 901.7 as part of the amendment as well, just to reduce confusion.
I can look into that. That was too big of a chapter for me to decide at that
It
moment.
gets hairy after a while, I know.
Yes.
Section 903.2.6, Group I, sprinkler systems. So definitely see the value in sprinkler systems in these locations. I believe these were, listed as group homes, halfway houses, et cetera. But my question is really, is there a potential burden of retrofitting in the case where residential homes have been converted to group homes or halfway houses? Are these considered under Group I or Group R or a different distinction?
So we do distinguish them as Group I.
That's Group I.
So first of all, this would only apply to a new one that's coming into the system, so when it's converted at that time to a group home. So if there are some that don't currently meet these guidelines, they would get to stay that way unless they made an addition that would qualify them to upgrade their system. I didn't have time to research on how many of them have these sprinkler systems, but I know from my previous experience, most of them were already required to put in sprinkler systems, and that's one of the things about a barrier to changing into a single-family home into a group home is that you have to do this upgrade because you may have people that have mobility issues that may take longer to get out of the building, which is why they're important. So it's a good idea for sure to have these in there. So I'd have to get more information about whether the existing ones are already required to do it, but this change would only apply to new things that are newly used that way. So a change in use, new construction, or if an addition to the building triggers activation of other parts of the building fire code.
Okay, I think my only general concern on this, I definitely see good intent. I obviously want people to be well protected, but I also see the unintended consequences that, future landlords may not want to lease to these organizations because of the burden and the cost that comes associated with that. So it might change the market as far as availability for these mostly charitable organizations to have that. So just something to be keep in mind or think about. Is there another way that we might want to look at this in terms of number of residences or other factors that might alter our thinking on that? I'll leave that open, not to be answered tonight. Section 903.2.11.1. This one was an interesting one. Stories without openings. So while reviewing the amendment and then cross-referencing this with what's in the IFC 2018, it was unclear what types of specific buildings are referenced for this section. So the IFC itself contains more specific language that maybe have been inadvertently removed, which define openings. So without this language, there was a section on here, I think the third section, on basements. And it read to me that if I didn't know the language that was in the 2018 that we were replacing, that all basements could essentially be applied to being required to have sprinkler systems as a result of this.
So again, this would be new. First of all, it would only apply to, again, new construction or when significant additions are made. But we also, as one of the amendments that we're proposing and to continue, is to exempt residential anyway. So residential basements would not be subject to this because they're exempted from the code in general.
It is IBC, so it's just the building code for commercial type buildings.
So yeah, so in one of the other codes, what Rick had said, that in the International Building Code, which we've also adopted, this only applies to commercial industrial buildings, yeah.
Basements are sprinkled.
So yeah, again, I think it's no disagreement with the intent. I think it's just a matter of looking at the language, just making sure that it's a bit more specific, at least from my
Do
understanding.
you want us to reiterate that it doesn't apply to residential?
Pardon me?
If we reiterated in this section again that it doesn't apply to residential or
I think
Class
that
R
would be
buildings?
helpful, absolutely. I think the definition of openings may have been what was missing, because I had to go back and look for that to understand what it meant.
Totally fair. Like I said, without giving you the whole book and then saying this is also
I know.
changing. Yeah.
I didn't have the book. I had the digital version, but it took some time. Last one. Yay. Section 907.1.4.1. Carbon dioxide alarm system. So this was new to me. I had that there are carbon dioxide alarms. No issue with the code language, but the location of this one could be confusing given that we do talk about carbon monoxide. It has its own section in 915. I know section 916 deals with gas detection systems, so I don't know if we want to amend it there or add a new section. So that was just a recommendation as far as making sure that it's clear.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
With that, I am done with my notes. I'm sure everyone is more than happy with that.
Mr. Mayor? I just had one that I spoke to prior to the meeting to George about the hood system suppression, where it says when the building is not, doesn't have a suppression system, that they may be required I think the may is a little vague too. You know, for a business owner, if they have a hood and they're doing their regular cleanings, you know, what would trigger the fact that they would need to put a suppression system in?
Okay, the concern here is that if a hood does go into a building that is not protected in any way, shape, or form with a sprinkler system or an alarm system, we're asking that that hood system be tied into a fire alarm. So the problem being here is that that building may be an older building that does not have an alarm, may be small in size. By putting in this hood system, converting into a restaurant, that's where in fact we may have to have the hood and that building have an alarm system to function.
But we're talking about new installations,
Correct.
not existing. I think that's so maybe we need to clarify that these are, it says, the way it's written right now, hood systems installed in buildings, it sounds like stuff we've already approved. We could go back?
Right, the only concern would really to be if it were an older type of a building.
Right, but again, we're looking at new hood systems. That's what this is about. This is about new installations, correct?
Correct.
Converting a building. That makes sense to me. What we're trying to avoid is going back and asking someone to change something they already have.
Right, and that's not the intent.
Right. Just make sure the language is clear on that.
Okay.
Just as a general guideline too, wasn't it commercial structures over 5,000 square feet require a sprinkler system? Is that still the code?
Yes, that's correct.
So it would apply to commercial structures over 5,000 in the village of Orland?
Yeah, this is just a fire alarm. This isn't a
No, but I'm just,
sprinkler.
as a general question.
Sprinkler systems are over 5,000 square feet.
That is correct for sprinkler systems.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Trustee Healy.
Didn't get a chance to read the entire code book.
Part one. This is half of it, so.
My concern is with we have the electrical.
Microphone.
My concern is my microphone. My concern is with the new charging stations for electrical vehicles and the potential for fires at those stations. I mean, electrical fire is, a special kind of fire. You can't really, I'm not sure how to treat it, but not with water, I suppose. So does this code address those situations? Because now we've got them by the mall, we've got them on there's going to be a more increasing use of these electrical charging stations, but does the code address these issues?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they talk about EV systems and things of that nature, so.
It might be that it's in these amendments that as it's being adopted, I just don't know, but
We'll get you the reference.
yes.
I understand there was going to be some changes in that for the code, but it must be something else I heard from somewhere else. All right, thanks.
Any other comments? Since we have all these changes, I'll entertain a motion to table.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments on tabling? Call roll.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Private pond evaluation.
Joel, if you want to present this.
Good evening. I have a short slide presentation. A lot of this information has already been previously briefed to you with our public ponds. We have now done the same evaluation process for the private ponds. We have 366 ponds that are private in the village of Orland Park.
So we have over 300 that are ours and another 366 that are private?
We're about 187, I think.
187, okay.
Sorry.
So we've got in total 540 some pounds.
Correct.
About
So
50 some.
these are both wet and dry ponds. So we did the same evaluation, looked at what the condition of all those ponds were, looking at specifically like inlets, outlets, structures, sediment overgrown, and the quality of the water. We did the same evaluation with ranking them. You can see a slide of one of the conditions there, as you can see where it's starting to erode away by one of the inlets. And so the rankings were worst is 5, 1 is the best. And the report's quite extensive, and that will help us in our next phase, which is really communicating to the homeowners. So this slide is our communication plan that we're going to be working with the property owners. We're going to work with, really, we broke up the ponds into 3 categories. Category A, B, and C. A being the worst, B in the middle, and then C, they're doing very well. Group A, what we would like to do in all the letters is always give them the condition of their pond, right? So they know the baseline of what's going on with their pond, and then some recommendations for repairs. Now, letter A will be more in depth to ask for their repair plan back to us, right? So that we can start working with those property owners. If they're needing assistance for some A&E services, we can recommend some services, but it's really a plan that they would give to the village of how they would repair their ponds. Group B really doesn't need a plan right now, but they need to know what's going on, and they need to start planning in the future and things that they can do if they want to do that at this time as well. So that, you can see that's the biggest chunk of those ponds, is about over 200 of them. And then Group C, we'll commend them on doing a great job. They're maintaining their ponds. Some might be newer. And so we'll give them some recommendations so that they don't get into category B or ever into category A. And that way we can inform them on things that they can do as their ponds age and so forth over the years. And so some of the recommendations we listed, those are the kind of things that we will state in the letter. Now, some of these ponds might have multiple owners, all right? Or maybe a homeowner association. So our next step would be for a communication plan is really to reach out to those owners and have the first dialogue with them. And our recommendation would be allow them plenty of time to come up with this plan and bring it back and let us review it by the end of the calendar year. That's my short brief. I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Compass.
Probably less of a question, more of a comment. It's actually a relief that only 44 fell into Group A. I was expecting more, which is, it's always nice to see those numbers be a little bit lower. I think my only thought is I'm looking at Group B as being the largest distribution at 106, 3.5 to 3.0. Is there maybe a means for us to be a bit more proactive just so that those 3.0 or 3.5s, I should say, don't slide into that next Group A?
Correct. And that exactly is our concern as well. And that's why with the letters to that middle group is to really get that word out so that they don't get worse. Our full intent is to let them know what they can do to keep them, maintain their pond, or even get it better as well. But our first attack is the Group A. Great, Chris.
Any other comments? I think this is great to be communicating with property owners. Board, be prepared for the
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, on that point, about, this is the first foray and it's friendly, but you have the history, that if they come back with what, leave us alone, or it's private, it's like, well, here's some history. Here's some things that have caused, major problems with the village because of ponds not being taken care of. We don't want to get in litigation with these people. We don't want to have these kind of problems with, the Metropolitan Water District. So you'll have all that ready to go, again, in a friendly, way to, to start the conversation. But then, like the, what is likely to come back is leave us alone, we can do what we want kind of thing. You'll have the thing ready to go, say, look, this is why we're trying to work together to avoid these things.
Correct. Yeah, that really is our game plan on this, is that we want to have that conversation. We want them to be informed. We want them to know what they can do to start. A lot of times they may not even have the funds really set aside to do the repairs, and they don't even know to do that. Just like your house, You know, you fix your roof, you know, it lasts 20 years. They may not know that they have to do maintenance on the pond. It just doesn't sit there and just to have no maintenance on it. That's that dialogue that we're trying to do.
And this is, Mayor and Village Board, this private pond evaluation is the second of our comprehensive pond evaluations. And the ponds are such a tied-in, intricate system that one pond that fails can really impact a lot of areas. So just going through some enforcement on a different private pond, there was a lot of lessons learned from that, from staff. And so that's why this is going to be more of the educational upfront.
Yeah, George hit it on the head. The storm system is a integrated system. Water could flow through a private pond to a public creek, to a private creek, to a public pond. It is integrated completely. And so everybody has to maintain their piece of that system so that the system works in totality.
Okay. All right, next.
Oath of office, village elected officials.
Well, so now it's my pleasure to administer the oath of office to our 3 trustees that have been reelected, so congratulations on your reelections. And I will call you up one at a time for that. And we'll go down here. So we'll start with our top vote-getter, trustee Catalina. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Cynthia Nelson Katsinas,
Having been reelected to the office of village trustee
having been reelected to the office of village trustee
in the village of Orland Park in the counties of Cook and Will aforesaid, in the village of Orland Park, in the counties,
of Cook and Will aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of village trustee
village trustee
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Trustee Healy. You need me to go 2 words at a time? Okay. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, William R. Healy,
Having been reelected
having been reelected
to the office of village trustee
to the office of village trustee
in the village of Orland Park
in the village of Orland Park
in the counties of Cook and Will aforesaid,
in the counties of Cook and Will aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United
I
States
will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of village trustee
of the office of village trustee
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Trustee Malani. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Michael R. Malani,
Having been reelected to the office of village trustee
having been reelected to the office of village trustee
in the village of Orland Park
in the village of Orland Park
in the counties of Cook and Will aforesaid,
in the counties of Cook and Will aforesaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United
that
States
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of village trustee
of the office of village trustee
To the best of my ability. To the best of my Congratulations.
Any non-scheduled citizens or visitors?
So I want to congratulate Cindy, Mike, and Bill for their reelection. I also want to thank them for all the hard work for the last 4 years. There are 4 people on this board floor that understand what they were put through in their first 2 years, me and the 3 of them. And their family members are the only ones that really know they were put through. What many of you don't know is sitting trustees at the time actually filed criminal charges against them within their first 24 hours for actions they took on your behalf. So these are the types of things they dealt with over and over again for 2 years for making decisions that were important for you. And you think about COVID and all that we went through COVID in uncertain times, and they stood up, made tough decisions, and did so in unwavering fashion, following the data that we had. And I think all of us would agree, all 4 of us would agree, we weren't sure that we had the information correct, but we were doing the best we could with what we had. As it turns out, in hindsight, we nailed it every single time. We got every decision right. And I would have never have guessed that we would have been batted 1,000. But we did. Hindsight has proven that every decision we made regarding COVID was the right one. So, and those were not easy times because they took a lot of heat from a lot of people. They were called a lot of things. And the intestinal fortitude and backbone that they showed to do what they need to for this village, all of the village residents should be very proud of what they did. I know I'm proud to have served with you. I'm thankful that you were here to provide that support because it wasn't easy. They did so at a very, very challenging time. Again, because of what the makeup of the board, which is not the same as it is today. And, it takes special kinds of people to put up with that and then run for re-election. And they all did. And as a village, you should be very thankful that you have them on your village board because they're fantastic trustees. And I'm thankful to be serving on the board with them. So thank you, all 3 of you.
Any non-scheduled citizens or visitors?
And did any board members have any other comments that they'd like to make before we go have cake? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call roll.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Compass?
Aye.
Trustee Reardon?
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski?
Aye.
Mayor Peacock?
Aye. We're adjourned. We will start the regular board meeting at 7:15 so we can go have cake and celebrate their swearing in.